This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks for joining me today for episode 80 of Think Big with Michael Zellner, all positive, no politics. My guest today joining me for the second time are former UT Chattanooga, VCU, and LSU basketball coach Will Wade and mental performance coach Greg Graber, who currently works with Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers, VCU, Rice, Siena, and TCU. Coach Wade is here today to talk a little bit about the upcoming 2022-23 college basketball season and talk a little bit about the direction of the game. And Greg is here to talk about the importance of mindfulness and how it is changing basketball for the better. Welcome to the show, guys.
Good to be here.
So, Coach, almost every poll that I've seen has Gonzaga, North Carolina, Houston, and Kentucky as the top four teams entering the season. You know, all four teams, they have several returning players from last year's. Why are they a level above everyone else to start the season?
Well, I mean, I think some of it's recency bias. I mean, I think Houston is really, really good. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're tough. They're physical. They return a lot of their guards who were hurt last year. You know, somebody like North Carolina scares me. They had a tremendous end of the season. They didn't really play that well during the year. They went on a tremendous NCAA tournament run and played tremendously in the NCAA tournament. And obviously, we're close to winning the national title. They returned their guard play, but, you can't discount what they did over 4 months for what happened in 4 weeks. And so I think there's something to be a little bit concerned about there. Obviously with Gonzaga, if you watch them against Tennessee the other night in their scrimmage with them, that was a little bit eye-opening. But their pieces are certainly there. They've got very good guard play. They've got good front court. They've got very good front court players. To me, Kentucky's the most complete team. I think they've got very good front court. They've got the best player in the country with Oscar Tshiebwe. Xavier Wheeler's tremendous point guard. I think what separates this Kentucky team from some of the other teams that they've had is they shoot it better. They've got Reeves, a transfer from Illinois State, who's like a microwave. They got Frederick healthy, transfer from, I believe, Iowa, who's a very good player. Toppin looks like he's improved quite a bit. So I think Kentucky is really good. Now, it may take them some time to get there with Wheeler hurt and with Tshiebwe hurt. So it may take them a little bit of time. And certainly, I was looking at this the other day. You look at Gonzaga's schedule, and it is brutal to open the season. I think they've got an exhibition game. Maybe it was last night. They played a Division II team, but then it's like, I mean, they play all high majors basically. For their first 5 games are big time games against big time programs, and they're not all at home. One of them's at Texas. I think they're playing Baylor and South Dakota. They got Michigan State on an aircraft carrier. I mean, they open with Portland State in the PK80, but then their second round game is going to be brutal. So I mean, their schedule is going to be really arduous as they start the season.
Don't you think that Coach Cal and Kentucky are a little bit more motivated this year? They haven't been to the Final Four since 2015. He's only won one national title there in 2012. With Anthony Davis, who was, just better than everybody in college basketball at the time, that, he's a little bit, I won't say he's on the hot seat, but Kentucky fans are just ready for, to go back to where it was, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, Coach Cal's done a phenomenal job there. You've got to keep feeding the beast, to your point.
Right.
Their expectations are a little bit different than everybody else's expectations. And they should be. They're one of the premier, they're the bluest of the blue bloods, no pun intended, but they've got a team that that can really do it. If you look, a lot of times, you look at Virginia, who got beat in the 16-1 game, then came back and won the national championship, the following year. And I'm sure Graber can talk to this, but fans and people don't like to go through the lows, but sometimes you got to go through some of those lows to reach the highs and to appreciate really what's been going on and how successful their program has been. I mean, it's hard to win in the NCAA tournament. All those games are hard to win. Doesn't matter. It's on a neutral court. Like it's a lot different. And every game's hard to win, and Kentucky's won a lot more than they've lost in the SEC tournaments and the NCAA tournament. So, I think Kentucky's going to bounce back strong from. They had a really poor year 2 years ago. Obviously, they had a great regular season last year. It was a little bit, excuse me, it was a little bit, it was a little bit lost because of what happened against St. Peter's. But, coming off back-to-back, certainly years that are probably not up to Kentucky's standards, I think they're going to bounce back strong. And really, they've got veterans. I mean, they got Wheeler, who's been in college 4 or 5 years. They got Toshibwe, who's been in college 3 years. They got Toppin, who's been there for a while. They got Frederick, who's got some miles on him. They got Reeves, who's got some miles on him. Kason Wallace, I think, is one of the best freshmen in the country. Chris Livingston's really good. I was sorry to see what happened with Damian Collins, his father passing away. A great family. I knew the family well from when we recruited him out of Atlanta, Texas. And Ben was a tremendous guy. Had a trucking company and loved his horses, and so did Damian. So hopefully he'll bounce back from that. But he's a really, really good player. So I mean, they've got some really, really good veteran players, guys who have been through it. And I think they're going to be really, really good. And I think they're going to bounce back from some of the disappointments.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when I look at those 4 teams, that I think Kentucky has the strongest out of all of them because they have those returners and they had such a strong freshman recruiting class. So yeah, they're my pick, so far, to win it all this year. That's what I'm thinking.
It's not a bad pick.
So
for a Memphis guy to pick Kentucky, that's interesting though. I like it. Yeah,
it's hard to do that, but I'm over it all now. I finally got over it.
It took me a while.
It did take me a while. You actually helped me a lot with that, in how I think. So I'm over it. So now I actually, I found out so many things about Coach Cal that I didn't know, all the positive things that he still does for Memphis and things he did for Larry Finch in his final years and helping the family out. And so my mindset has changed a lot about him. So, I'm not like rooting hard for him, but I'm not rooting against him anymore.
There you go.
So, Greg, George Mumford said, quote, meditation is not trying to go anywhere or do anything. Meditation and being present is just seeing what's there and letting it speak to you, unquote. Tell us a little bit about who George Mumford is and how all this began in basketball.
So George Mumford is one of my mentors. He was the gentleman that kind of got Phil Jackson the moniker of being the Zen master. So he basically started what Will and I have done with all of his teams and probably the 15 or 20 D1 teams that I've worked with, just kind of teaching them to be present in the moment. A lot of the players are they get fixated on what's next, like the future. I just got back, as you guys know, this past week. I was working with VCU, and then I went to Houston and worked with Rice, and then Albany, New York, and worked with Siena. And with a lot of these guys, they're kind of, which is normal, college is a transition phase about what comes next mentally. A lot of them are thinking about, okay, I want to play professionally, whether it's in the NBA or the G League or overseas. But what we try to impress upon them with these techniques is you're going to be more successful getting to where you want to go by being in the present moment as much as you can. The way that we're wired, our species, we're always fixated on any perceived threat that's in the future. But we're a lot more productive if we can plan for the future and not fixate it and kind of take care of the present moment to get there. So we teach them things like visualization, mental imagery, conscious breathing, meditation. We call it a mental toolbox. They can pull out these techniques and use them when they need to, not just for basketball, but for school, for life. And, when we started, Will and I, we've been doing it forever, since his first team at Chattanooga. And I met him through Josh.
It was a lot cheaper then.
Yeah, like free, right? Like free. Like, you've paid me back, though, nicely, so I'm not going to complain about that, right? I went from driving 5 hours to Chattanooga all the time to being flown to LSU and VCU, so I can't complain.
And, the players that use mindfulness and meditation, I mean, people that maybe don't believe in it, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, I mean, LeBron.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Michael, because, and Will has seen it a million times. Heck, he's been around it so much he could probably teach it. I've got a PowerPoint, and it's like Kobe talking about the benefits of mindfulness, and Michael Jordan and Chris Paul and just all these guys. So
Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray, see, he knows. That's a good one. I forgot about that one, Coach. So, it's easy to demystify it now. When we started, you didn't have these guys, right? You just had Phil Jackson doing this kooky stuff. Now it's more mainstream. I started working with the Grizzlies around the time, a little bit after, when I started working with Will at UT Chat, and they kind of changed my title from mindfulness coach because it sounded so esoteric back then. It's before mindfulness was mainstream, seemed a little hippy dippy, to mental performance. So what I say is I do mindfulness.
Michael, did you know Graber made the website at Siena? That's his crowning achievement so far.
I had no
I'm
idea.
rostered. He's
on the website at Siena, so you should check him out.
You never rostered me. All the stuff I've done for you, they put me on the roster. How's that? I'm finally on a D1 roster. All the teams, Siena came through. So, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun though.
Sorry, I had you lose your train of thought. I'm good at that.
No, you are. It's been a lot of fun though. We've had a lot of success doing it, and I end up working with some of the coaches too sometimes. So,
Coach Gonzaga has been, a top seed in the tournament 4 out of the last 5 years, and they returned 6 of their 8 top scorers from last year, including Drew Timm, who, along with Kentucky's Oscar Tshiebwe, lead the preseason All-America team. And Gonzaga added 2022 Southern Conference Player of the Year, Malaki Smith, from the first school that gave you a shot to be head coach, UT Chattanooga. What do you think about the job that Mark Few has done at a supposed mid-major that is way out west? And how good can this team be this year?
Hey, can we add one more question on that too when Will answers it? How would they do in the Big 12, since that's the rumor too?
Well, I mean, there's nothing mid-major about Gonzaga. One of our players from last year is out there. I actually talked to him, Efton Reed. I talked to him earlier this week. He called me and we were catching up on some stuff. And there's nothing, there's nothing mid-major about their operation and their results. Their results would speak to that. Now, certainly I was talking about their tough non-conference schedule. You're not a mid-major when you can get those games. I know every fan base at every supposed mid-major, we just need to schedule that. Well, the high majors don't want to schedule you. Like, you've got to bring some value to the table. It's not like you can just call up such and such and they're going to play you. I used to get even when I was at LSU, why can't we just go play North Carolina? Well, North Carolina doesn't want to play us. I mean, right. There's no benefit to them for playing us. Are they going to play us, or they're going to go play Indiana? Like, they're going to go play Indiana. It's just the way it works. So you've got to kind of work within the constraints that you have. So my point is, Gonzaga can get games with anybody, anywhere. I mean, Kentucky's coming to Spokane to play them. Not at their home court, but at the Spokane Arena, but it'll be practically a home court, although Kentucky travels well. They're playing Michigan State on the aircraft carrier. They're playing at Texas. They got Baylor. I mean, Texas played at Gonzaga last year. So they can, as long as you can schedule like that, you're not a mid-major. If you can get those games, there's nothing mid-major about you. Now, to your point about going to the Big 12, the Big 12's been, I think Ken Palm's had the Big 12 the best league 2 or 3 out of the last 4 years. 3 out of the last 4 years, I believe, in the country. And Gonzaga would certainly add to that. Now, is Gonzaga going to run up 30 wins in the Big 12 and go undefeated like they do in the West Coast Conference? No, they're certainly going to lose some games. But, I mean, as they've proven in the NCAA tournament when they play all the best teams in the country, they're certainly capable of competing with those guys and will compete with those guys. So like I said, do I think they're going to go 18-0? No, but they'll be one of the better teams in the league, and they'll be able to compete at the top of the league. And so, obviously, like Michael was saying, getting good transfers is they're able to get highly ranked freshmen, which shows they're not mid-major, and then able to get a kid like Malaki Smith from Chattanooga, get Efton Reed, who they got from us at LSU, who's a former 5-star big kid. He's got a very bright future. He's going to be a really good player. You add that to to Drew Timme and Nolan Hickman and Rasir Bolt, just some of the guys that they have. And they got a good formula. They get really, really good high school players. They get good transfers. For a while they did it with international guys. They did a really good job. They really found a market in efficiency overseas and took a lot of guys from overseas when other schools weren't doing that. So, they've found a way to, that's how they're a big time. They've reinvented themselves a couple of times. They started off with the international kids, and they got to then once they built the program up enough, they're able to get really highly touted freshmen, and then they were able to add to that and get transfers. So, what Coach Few's done there is certainly very impressive.
I think I pronounced his name wrong. I think I said Malachi. It's Malachi. So I apologize for that. I hate pronouncing anyone's name wrong.
And you messed up on Timmy too.
I know. Yeah, I'm not perfect. Sorry about that.
Nah, you're good.
So, Greg, in February of 2018, NBA star DeMar DeRozan said, he tweeted out, quote, "This depression gets the best of me," unquote. He was losing sleep, not over how to get better at basketball, but over stress. He tried to backtrack, but then a lot of NBA players came out and said, "Hey, I go through a lot of the same things," and they go through mental health struggles themselves. It really brought the issue to the forefront where it needs to be. How to do what you do? How does it help with depression and other mental health issues?
So that's a great question. And one, it's great to see it coming more to the forefront, sort of people realizing the importance of mental health. You had tennis player Naomi Osaka, and you've had, I forgot the Olympian. Well, she may have been an LSU runner who was dealing with it as well.
Oh gosh, I can't think of her name right now. I know exactly who you're talking about, though. Oh, she's tremendous. She won everything.
Yeah, she was incredible.
I can't think of her name.
And then you had Love, the guy in the NBA player. So it's been really good. Sort of what I teach, the mental performance skills and mindfulness obviously isn't a substitute. It's not like a clinical treatment for depression. It can help with sort of thoughts and anxiety. And it depends on sort of what the cause is for someone. If they're dealing with sort of an anxiety issue or depression, we don't really know all the time. Is it genetic? Is it situational? I see with some players, I was just talking about to the 3 teams that I worked with this week. Part of it is with these kids, with these college basketball players, a lot of them
Sha'Carri Richardson, that's who it is.
Thank you. Yeah. Some of them have this perfection mindset instead of a growth mindset, where if they miss a shot or have a bad practice or one bad game, it's just catastrophic for them mentally. We try to teach them to have a growth mindset instead of having the pursuit of perfection. And with a growth mindset, they come to realize that mistakes and mishaps are part of the game. As long as they learn from them and move on and get better, then it's not a lost cause, if that makes sense.
Michigan State is usually ranked in the top 25, not only in preseason polls, but usually throughout the entire season, Coach. And, for the second year in a row, Tom Izzo's club finds themselves unranked about 6 spots out of the top 25. It looks like, along with Gonzaga, they have the toughest schedule in the country. In the month of November, they play number 2 Gonzaga, number 4 Kentucky, number 16 Villanova, number 20 Alabama. They're going to be lucky to probably win one of those games. What advantage does it give teams that schedule tough games early in the season when they get to March?
Well, Michigan State may win more than one of those. You never know. Anytime you got Tom Izzo, that's a great equalizer. I know they don't have a lot returning, and their roster on paper doesn't look as formidable, but it's they got a good way about them of figuring things out and finding ways to win. But I certainly think the tougher you schedule, the better it helps you, moving down the road. I think the selection committee values it. So if you want to get in the tournament, you need to schedule tough. You need to schedule well. You certainly got to win some of those games. But once you get in the tournament, all the games are tough. Like I said, it's hard to win in that thing. Even a 2-15 game is hard to win. And certainly once you get out of the first round, they are extremely hard to win. They're basically 50-50 coin flips every game. And so, I think the more you prepare your team, the more your team's been in tough situations and adverse situations and situations where you got to figure things out and use some of your late game stuff. I think that's really, really important. And I think teams that have that to draw on when they get to the NCAA tournament, I think that's really beneficial to them. And Michigan State, certainly, one thing that goes overlooked too is the Big Ten plays a ton of conference games. So they play, I think, 20 conference games. You look at that. I mean, Michigan State, you get 31 games. If you maximize your games, they're going to have 25, 26 of their 31 games against high major teams, which is
right.
just absolutely, absolutely brutal.
Is that why some teams that end up 18 and 13 or 19 and 12?
Yeah, not all records are created the same. I mean,
they get in the tournament.
You're going to play 25, 26 high major teams. You're going to lose quite a few games. I mean, if you lose 12 games, you've basically done a pretty good job. Like you've kind of split the difference on a lot of 50-50 games. And so, I certainly think one thing I looked at before each year was, based on our schedule, how many games did I think we could lose and be on the bubble? And you always want to have a schedule. You have a tough schedule if you were somewhere between 11.5 and 13 losses. That if you could absorb that, like, you had a really, really tough schedule. And so I was always trying to aim somewhere we could have between 11.5 and 13 losses and still make the tournament based on our schedule and based on the analytics of our schedule. And so, certainly the tougher your schedule, the more margin for error you have. But you're also going to, and Greg knows this, you're going to deal with a lot more stuff when you lose. Winning can hide a lot of your issues. You can, as a head coach, you try not to let the winning hide the issues. You try to still bring them out. But the reality is, when you're on a 7-game winning streak, it's a lot harder to get guys to correct some things that are going to bite them later on. And so, there's pluses and minuses to that. When you create a schedule that's that tough and that rough, you're going to deal with some more of the BS a little bit earlier on, but it pushes that BS to the surface earlier, and you don't just keep it underneath the surface. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses to it. There's a lot of, you got to think hard about how you compose your schedule. And certainly Tom Izzo's been doing it as well, or better than anybody, for a long time. And quite frankly, those Big Ten teams all do it very well. They manipulate those schedules really well. That's why they get so many teams in the tournament. They're a very good league, don't get me wrong, but they manipulate those non-conference schedules. They win a couple of those non-conference games, and they go beat up on each other for 20 games, and the numbers don't change much. And that's how they're able to get, 8, 9 teams in the tournament. And so, when you're doing that, and the rest of the league's bought in and committed to doing that, it makes it a little bit easier to go out and schedule tough.
It's interesting because we've talked about this before. When we were at VCU, it all depends on conference too, like you said. It was more about not losing in conference. Whereas at LSU, it was about winning. In other words, you take the A-10 where VCU is, it's a 2-bid league, maybe 3. But the SEC, you could get 7 or 8 and still lose, right? So it becomes more about winning instead of trying to avoid losing, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we the one year we won 2 really, really close games in the same week. I mean, we were a 10 seed. We were not large that year. We were a 10 seed. And shoot, I mean, we didn't lose a game for probably a month and a half in the Atlantic 10. And if we'd have lost any of them, I mean, not only were we at 10, I think we were the last 10. Like we were 5 or 6 spots from not making the tournament. I think there was 2 11 seeds and then the first 4. So we were like the seventh to last team in, so to speak. And, if we lose any of those games, we probably don't get in. Mm-hmm. And so it's tough, especially when you're at, somewhere like VCU or Dayton or St. Louis and the Atlantic 10. I mean, I used to always joke, and I'm not taking anything away, but when you go on some of these to play some of these other Atlantic 10 teams, I mean, they're going to have the foam fingers. It's their T-shirt giveaway. It's a big deal when you go play them. And so those games, you don't get any credit for them, and they are extremely tough to win. Try going to win at St. Bonaventure on a Saturday with all those students in there. I mean, it's brutal. It's as tough an environment as you can play. I mean, it's as tough an environment as you can play in. and they're fired up when I mean, they're fired up when anybody comes up there, but they're certainly fired up when Dayton or St. Louis or VCU or something. I mean, that's a tough place to play. Rhode Island's a really tough place to play. The Ryan Center. I mean, but you get no credit for any of that, and people don't. I mean, there's places in the Atlantic 10 that are tougher to win at than some of the places in the SEC. I mean, some of those SEC games on a weeknight, that used to be where I used to always try to make a living on those weeknight games in those smaller college towns where people can't get there all the time. Like, you can play in front of a pretty sparse environment sometimes, and you got to win those. Like, those are not true road games. But shoot, some of those A10 games they're brutal, but you don't get nearly as much credit for them. And so, I think what Greg's saying is, sometimes when you're in we're using the Atlantic 10 as an example, but when you're in a certain league, it's almost like an avoidance goal. You're trying not to lose. And, when you're in the SEC, every game's, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4, when you play in the past couple of years, you play one of the bottom teams at home, you don't have much to gain. You have everything to lose. You're in that kind of avoidance realm again, but pretty much everything else in the SEC is kind of, you're going for it. You get value added with everything. And if you lose, it doesn't, all right, just, you chalk it up and move on to the next one where you got another good opportunity. And so it's just very different. It's just a very different way of going about things, but it's hard, man. It's hard to make the NCAA tournament from the Mountain West, from the Atlantic 10, from those, like Conference USA this year is going to be a bear. I mean, UAB is tremendous. Western Kentucky, tremendous. Both of them are borderline top 25 teams. But I mean, I think Western Kentucky plays South Carolina and I think they play South Carolina and at Louisville in the non-conference, and Louisville obviously lost it. I mean, your margins are just so thin. They're opening at Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky is. That's a tough game. You got to go get any credit for winning it. And then, UAB's they've got some SEC teams they're playing. They've got some big time games as well. But I mean, you got to have a lot go right in those multi-bid leagues that are right there at 2 or 3 bids. I think the Mountain West got 4 last year. The West Coast Conference has got multiple bids, Gonzaga, St. Mary's, BYU, they've all gotten in at times. But I mean, it's tough. And the West Coast Conference, if you're one of those teams and you go play, there's some tough places there. There's some tough, Loyola Marymount's gotten better. You go to some of those places, it's not as easy. The Missouri Valley's the same way. Missouri Valley just added Belmont from our state. They added Murray State, who are both tremendous teams. They've still got Northern Iowa and all those guys. And so it's tough sledding in a lot of those leagues. I think the American last year was 2 or 3 bids, right?
It's similar. It reminds me.
Look at Memphis. Memphis lost, I believe, at East Carolina last year. And
it reminds me of the A10 a lot, the American.
Yeah, and then they still made the tournament. So it's really, really tough when you get in those things, and those avoidance leagues are tough. I mean, you spend 3 months you go to games. I'll never forget one year I was at VCU. We played at LaSalle, and VCU's got an unbelievable fan base. We had more people there than LaSalle, but we played at LaSalle on like a Wednesday night at like 8:00. It was dreary, and I mean, we barely won. If we lose that game, we probably don't make the tournament. LaSalle was good. Dr. Giannini was the coach. Like he was a damn good coach, and they lost a ton of close games, and they had some talented players, and man, those are just tough games.
So, Greg, you go by the title now, mental performance coach. Now, when you started out, it was mindfulness coach. Why the change?
I think kind of what I was alluding to earlier, just kind of misconception. So when I started working with the Grizzlies, one of their main performance guys said, well, let's call you mental performance coach. Even realizing that it's kind of mindfulness based, it had less of an esoteric sort of notion. That was kind of when you really had to demystify what mindfulness is and isn't. Now, of course, it's like we were talking about, a lot more mainstream. So I go by whatever they call me if they pay me. They can call me, as Will knows, they can call me anything.
What does Will call you?
You don't want to get, I don't think that's suitable.
Yeah,
for
I can't say that on here. I'd love to say that, but
I say it in the nicest way possible.
He does. It's a term of endearment. So
Coach, you'd referred to North Carolina, their preseason number one in the AP. Hubert Davis just finished his first season, made it to the national championship game and almost losing to Kansas 72-69. He was an assistant under Roy Williams for 9 seasons before him becoming head coach when Coach Williams retired. They obviously had a great system in place that Coach Davis was a part of before. How much does a difference does that make for a team when they have a coaching change, when an assistant can step right in and continue what's been working so well?
Well, certainly in North Carolina's case, there's a lot more to it. They've got a unique basketball culture, unique basketball family. So not only, did Coach Davis, he was part of that family and part of that culture. He'd been an assistant there. He'd been a player there. So it was a natural transition and a smooth transition for him and for the program. So, when a program's winning at a high level, there's a lot of, especially at a high, there's a lot of pluses to promoting from within. And certainly when you've got a great like Roy Williams, who makes his feelings known, who he wants. I mean, you're gonna listen because, he's one of the patriarchs of the program. I mean, obviously they've had Dean Smith. They've got tremendous history and tradition at Carolina, but certainly it's a unique place, when there's, it's like Duke's got the brotherhood. Carolina's kind of got their family, you're going to promote from within. And when you've got iconic head coaches, they're going to be able to choose who they want to promote from within.
And, what you talk about with Duke, John Shire steps in, number 1 recruiting class in the nation, following Coach K. I mean, just like you said, it's the program, the system, and, the history of those schools, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, look, they got tremendous resources. They've got everything you need. I mean, some of those schools have nicer facilities than NBA facilities. And so it's built to win, and you just got to have somebody that can keep between the lines and not put that thing in the ditch.
it's interesting talking about North Carolina. One of the teams I worked with last season was Marquette, and Coach North Carolina was underranked to say the least. I think they were an 8 seed.
Yeah, it's an 8-9 game, I believe.
And, we were feeling really good. Marquette was really good. We had our plan, and it was just like a buzzsaw. I mean, they were incredible.
See if they can carry it over to this year without Brady Manick.
Yeah.
So, Greg, basketball requires a high amount of focus on things that take place in very short amount of times. Decisions have to be made left and right, and the flow of the game is rarely interrupted. That kind of demand for attention, it can tire out the mind pretty fast. What methods do you teach players that you work with to help them keep their focus, not only throughout the game, but also in life?
So it all starts with being self-aware. So that's one thing that the meditation is really good for. A lot of times guys who haven't done it before think it's something mystical or magical or spiritual or hippy dippy, but basically you're learning to observe your thoughts. There's a misconception that meditation is about controlling your thoughts or silencing your mind. You can't ever really do that. But if you can learn to listen to your thoughts and observe, then when you're playing, or you can apply it into other facets of your life. If you become distracted or disrupted, you can learn to refocus. So one of the things that we do is we teach them what we call our mental resets. If they get upset or sort of overly emotional when something doesn't go well, we'll have sort of a technique or techniques that they can use to kind of get back into the present moment quickly without much thought or effort.
What are some of the ways that helps them in life too? I mean, I know that obviously this goes much further than basketball for you. You're wanting to impact them, beyond the court.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. If it's all about cultivating a healthy relationship with your thoughts and emotions, and knowing that thoughts aren't always absolute truths, right, Coach? They're mental activity. And just knowing that we don't have to buy into every thought.
God, if I had $1 for every time I heard that.
We could both retire. So, that's what it's all about. Just learning to listen to what's going on and have a quick pause and to see whether it's worthy of buying into or not and acting. So one of the coaches I worked with, I don't want to name him, he was really into mindfulness, and he said, well, it's kind of the 3 A's. It's awareness, acceptance, and then action. I thought that was kind of cool. So,
Coach, who are some of your fellow coaches that you admire the most?
I mean, I admire anybody.
Himself.
No. No, I mean, look, it's a tough profession. It's cutthroat. There's a lot of guys that I really admire and think do a phenomenal job with their teams and with their programs, and they've been able to withstand the test of time and just do it over and over and over and over and over again. And so there's just so many tremendous coaches. That's what makes college basketball so hard, is there's a lot of programs that are resourced at a pretty high level. There's a lot of really, really good coaches. And football, really, I mean, they got 100 and whatever teams in the FBS, but you're really looking at about 15 to 20 teams that have the coaching, the resources, the infrastructure to really try to get in the playoff and win it. I mean, if you look at the playoff, it's really about 6 to 8 teams that have made it almost every time. In basketball, there's 330 some odd teams playing Division I, but there's 40 or 50 people that are really, really good coaches and got adequate resources at their school to put themselves in a position to compete at a national level and win national titles and develop their guys. Now there's certainly a select group of coaches and schools that can recruit at an elite level, which that's a huge component of being a good college team and being a good college coach. But I think that's what makes college basketball so exciting, is there's more teams in the mix, and there's more teams in the mix that can catch fire at the right time and make things happen. But there's so many tremendous coaches and programs all across the country.
So the interesting thing that I've learned because Will and I are close friends, as you can tell, I hang around him a lot.
We didn't start that way. I said, who is this goofy guy teaching all this crazy stuff to our guys?
You drank the Kool-Aid though, man. It helped. I think
it was
the fact
great.
that
it really is. I'm sorry. What were you going to say? I interrupted you.
No, the fact that I worked for a season for free, man. Could you imagine either of us doing that now? That's crazy talk. But being around Will, I see, you talk about what you were asking him, Michael. And by the way, you asked the best questions. I do a lot of these, as I know Will does even more. Great questions. But when you talk about, who do you admire as a coach? A lot of I would say just fans who aren't really, that don't know the whole spectrum of it. You think a coach is just like X's and O's and the basketball stuff. Will, you and I were talking about this the other day. Being a coach in basketball, you're the promoter, you're the parent, you're the psychologist, you're cultivating donors, the basketball part of it is the smallest part of it, right, Will?
Correct.
It's amazing, Michael. Most people don't realize, and you wouldn't know that, but it's I'd say the basketball part seems to be about 10% of it.
Oh, there's so much other stuff that goes into it. I used to always say this: if people knew what it took to get a team to the court, the fans probably wouldn't show up. So it's better that just stays behind closed doors and
I mean, monitoring grades, you're doing everything, man. Dealing with families and parents who are complaining. It's a never-ending radio show, TV show, just whatever, all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nonstop. But that's the fun part of it, and you got to embrace all that. And the best coaches are good at all that stuff. Can market, can coach, can recruit. Those are the guys that are really, really successful. Now, some programs, when you're in a blue blood, you don't have to market. That's kind of done for you. But all the places that, the other places, like marketing's a huge portion of it. Like, you got to have fans in the stands. I mean, at the end of the day, the athletic directors are looking at the revenue. And, I I had bi-weekly meetings when I was at LSU with ticket office, all sorts of people. We called it Basketball 365. It was all sorts of people outside of our realm. I wanted updates on everything. I wanted our Twitter interactions, our Instagram interactions, our Facebook interactions. I wanted to know what they had planned for ticket promotions, how our season tickets were, who I needed to call about. I mean, all that sort of stuff. We were over 7,000 season tickets, 7,500 season tickets one year, which is the most they'd had since they reconfigured the PMAC. And like that stuff's important because that's revenue. That's people getting concessions and, you know, that's all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, you've got to be intricately involved in all of that sort of thing when you're at a high major program, especially one that's not a blue blood. I mean, you've just got to, you got to be on top of all that at all times. There's a lot of different ways you get pulled as a basketball coach.
So you're saying you guys earn all that money that you make?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about you know,
Look at it.
A little bit out of control right now, but it's certainly more to meets the eye than just walking out on the court and coaching the team. That's the fun part. That's usually the best part of your days when you get to get out there. And, you know, I would always plan practice early in the morning so I could, you know, because all hell broke loose between 8 and when we started practice. So I'd have practice planned early in the morning. So then I could kind of get on with my day and deal with everything as it came up. And you know, by the time we got to practice, that was usually the most fun part of the day.
I never made those early ones.
Yeah, he never got to the meeting. If the meeting was 4 8 a.m., he certainly wasn't there. Before 10 a.m., he certainly wasn't showing up.
You know what you're talking about, Coach. It reminds me of when R.C. Johnson hired Coach Cal here back in March of 2000. For the 9 years that he was here, he promoted Memphis like crazy. He'd never lived here, probably never had been here before, but he promoted the city like crazy and everything. He got us on national TV, and I mean, and just he was out there. He was the man in charge. I mean, he could have run for mayor and won. I mean, that's how popular he was when he was here. Obviously, when he left, it was a little bit different. But when he was here, he was all about Memphis and promoting it, and he was the guy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be that. And now even like, you know, I did some stuff last year marketing-wise. They talked me into doing that I wasn't all that excited about. But I thought
is that where you wore that general costume?
Yeah, thanks. But you know, the idea is in name, image, and likeness, and with the transfer portal, the players are turning over quickly. So, like, you got to be the face of the pro. You're going to be what the fans are coming for some of the time because they're not even going to know who's on your team. I mean, shoot, you need a new roster every year with what we did at LSU. We were flipping that thing every year. Major. I mean, we're going to have 7, 8, 9 new guys every year. We'd have 4 or 5 holdovers. So, I mean, a lot of it is, the coach is much more involved as the face of the program, especially with NIL and the transfer portal, because of, because the fans want to have something they can hold on to and identify with. And so I think it is even more important. That's what Cal does at Kentucky. I mean, he runs those guys through there all the time, but he's clearly the face of the program. And there's one, I wouldn't even say there's one voice, there's one sound. I mean, it's him. All the time. And that's what he's got to be. And that's what he has to do.
One interesting aspect of that, Coach, is, and it's funny, it came up in conversations I had this week with all the teams that I visited and worked with, the phenomenon of you have to re-recruit your kids every year now too. It's not just recruit them once.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting.
Yep.
So Greg, you've worked with over 20 Division I college basketball programs. Who have been some of your favorites to work with?
Will's, of course, and I'm not just saying that. Will's been the most loyal, and like I said, we're like brothers. It's been a lot of fun. We kind of started off together. I'm a little bit older than him. I was
about to say the much older brother.
Yeah, that's nice. But going with him from Chattanooga to VCU to LSU, and I look forward to the next one. Obviously, we work really well together, and we're tight, and we talk daily. Of course, Memphis was great. It's where kind of I started. Pastner gave me that shot. I love VCU. Will connected me to VCU because he was an assistant there for Shaka. I've sensed work with, they call it the Ramley, the VCU Rams. So I've worked with Shaka, Will, Jamian, now Mike Rhodes. They've been really good to me. I love Rice and Scott Pera, Sienna and Carm have been really good to me.
Basically anybody who writes him a check he likes.
There's some I don't. Of one I'm not wild about. I'm not gonna name him.
He doesn't write you a check anymore though.
He doesn't write me a check. You might be onto something after all, Coach. He doesn't write me a check anymore. It's been a lot of fun. It's cool seeing the different dynamics, the way that they all coach differently and run the programs differently. And it's just cool working with kids and coaches. And it's a lot of fun.
So, Coach, more than half of college basketball's Division I conferences, they have pending membership changes. It looks like you've talked about earlier, Gonzaga is now in talks to possibly join the Big 12. What do you think about all the crazy realignment going on?
That's just part of it. I mean, it's money driven, and I mean, it's semi-professional sports at this point. It's like AAA baseball for the major league. That's what college basketball is. With the G, all that stuff, and that's basically what it is. So, teams are going to do what they need to do to cash in as best they can. And so I don't see, hopefully it'll settle down here in a little bit, but it is what it is at this point.
So, Greg, do you have any one or two games that stand out to you the most over the years that you've been working with college basketball teams?
There's been so many. I think just right off the top of my head, Will, those two we had at VCU where basically back-to-back in a few days, we won by
Bonaventure and George Washington, on the road.
What was it?
0.6.
We were down and we won both of those. And not to pat myself on the back, but I am. This is a plug. I can clip this for my website. When Jaquan took those deep breaths, and
that was at Bonaventure.
It was awesome. And you ran that one play against GW.
Correct.
What was that one called, that play?
He took the charge.
Yeah, that was great. That was one of those I would think as a coach you'd always want to run with no time left and win the game, right? Kind of a fantasy.
No, you don't usually want to run that because you're in desperation mode if you're running that. And just so happened we got lucky, but yeah, you're in desperation mode when you're running that.
And we don't win those two games, we don't make it to the tournament. That was a fun team, man. It was scrappy. We had to win just about, like, you had to beat who you were supposed to beat. Those 2 years at VCU, that probably took a couple of years off your life, Coach, those couple of years, man. That was tough. And VCU is a lot like Memphis. Big mid-major. Fans are really into it. Basketball is king there, So I would say probably those two.
The NIL, name, image, and likeness, has been in place for a little bit over a year now and gives college athletes the opportunity to make money off of those three things while they're in school. And, college basketball players are definitely making the most money from the NIL from what it seems to this point. Coach, what are your thoughts on the NIL and how it's going to affect the future of the game?
Well, I think the market's going to correct itself. I think there's a lot of variation right now. With the market and it's fluctuating up and down. And I think the market inefficiencies will certainly even out as time moves forward here. But, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's certainly not moving. It's certainly not going anywhere. And so I think it's going to be something that's here for the long haul, and it's good for the players. And so it's not going anywhere. So people are going to have to adjust and get used to it.
It's one of the reasons why, obviously, Oscar Tshiebwe decided to stay at Kentucky.
Yeah, if you're a small guard or a true center like him, like small guard like Nigel Pack, the kid who got all the money at Miami, I mean, shoot, you can make more in NIL than you can, in the G League, which is, the NBA doesn't do a lot with small guards. They don't do a lot with true centers anymore. And so, it's almost the NIL is going to help keep some of those really good players in college as opposed to them going to kind of sputter out in a pro career early on.
How is mindfulness and meditation changing both the players and the college game now, Greg?
I think they have more of an awareness in general how important the mental side of the game is now. And I liken it to, 40 years ago, you look at someone like Larry Bird. I mean, he's a great player, but like he didn't have the physique of like current NBA players have. Didn't stop him from being one of the best. But strength and conditioning and weightlifting wasn't like it is now. So I think the new frontier is people are starting to realize that the mental side of the game is a difference maker, just like they realized that physical conditioning and lifting weights and all that was, if that makes sense.
Coach, you have one of the best young coaching minds in college basketball and a great understanding of the X's and O's.
Here we go. Blow that ego up just a little bit.
I don't know about that.
You do. When do you anticipate getting back into coaching?
I don't know. We'll see. I got to continue to go through the process here, and we'll kind of see where the process comes out. But I certainly enjoy it. I love every part of college basketball. I enjoy the recruiting, the coaching, the meeting people, all the stuff Graber was talking about earlier. Like, I actually enjoy all that. There's a lot of people that don't. I enjoy being busy and being there for everybody as best I can. So hopefully I'll get another opportunity, and we're gonna make the most of it when we get it. I know that we made some mistakes with, I'm not talking about with the case. I'm talking more about with, there's certainly some things that we can improve on within our program. And I've been able to see a bunch of other people do it. I've been around a bunch of NBA teams, and I certainly think when we get back, we'll be better suited for it.
I kid him a lot, but the game is a lot better off when Will's in it, man.
Yeah, talk about bruising the ego there. I mean, you're trying to get him to bring you along again, aren't you?
No, it's nothing to do with that, man. I can get business.
He knows he's in. He's in for better or worse. So he knows he's in.
Speaking of that, Greg, how and when did you first meet Will? You talked about, I know, at the school and everything. But how did you agreed to work for free?
Yeah,
you didn't have any clients, Michael.
Yeah, I did. I had Memphis. And the Grizzlies were about to bite. But so, working with Pastner at Memphis, his team there, that was, they were really good. A bunch of All-Americans back then, ranked. One of his players, Trey Draper, one of his former players, became a grad assistant for Will at UT Chattanooga. He kept bugging Will about this mindfulness stuff that we were doing with Joe. And Joe was not an easy one to do. Joe would tell you he's not an easy one to do. Yeah. He bought into it. It helped him a lot. Trey kept bugging Will, and he's like, I don't have time for this BS, this weird hokey coat. Finally, he agreed to meet me. I went up to Chattanooga because Holly, my wife, who is the real athlete in the family, was doing an Ironman there. So I met with Will, walked in, talked with him for about, I don't know, an hour. And I thought he was so young. He looked so young. I thought he was the manager. I'm like, I wish this damn precocious kid would just bring the coach in so I could talk to him. And then Will says, yeah, that sounds great. Will's very progressive, open-minded, reflective. I mean, he's going to do whatever makes his team better. And he reads voraciously. Love that about him. He's like, yeah, we'll do this. But there's one thing, we're kind of a small D1. I don't have a big budget. I can't pay you. And I thought, first thing I thought, shit, how am I going to explain this to my wife? And then, but, he was just very engaging. I liked him.
I'm very persuasive.
He is very persuasive. But also, there was that. I would say 90% of the reason was, I'll do this for a year. I really like this guy. He's cool. And the other 10% was, this guy's going places. He's got to, at some point, he may actually pay me. And, he got the job at VCU a couple years later and started flying me to Richmond, paying me to help, and then LSU. And it's history. It's been a good, from a friendship perspective, it's been really good for me too, man. Will's very loyal, very faithful, someone I confide in and pick his brain every now and then. So it's been good.
Coach, what did you think of Greg and all this mindfulness stuff at the very beginning? And what do you think?
First, I wasn't real high on it, and then he converted me. The first couple of times, I'm like, what in the world is all this crap? But then he's persistent now. He's good at what he does. He's persistent. Our guys, we had a point guard from Memphis on that Chattanooga team, Greg Pryor. He's actually a chef now.
Ridgeway, right? Ridgeway.
Yeah, went to Ridgeway.
Michael went to your school, man.
He's a chef now. And he was a great kid, awesome kid. And he got into it. It kind of all got, and once the guys got into it, I'm like, all right, this is pretty good. And then Greg, of course, got me into it and got me into all this other stuff. And so, we became, look, it's a business, obviously, relationship in the terms of, he's working with our program and our guys, but we've become obviously tremendous friends through this, just from being around each other so much and him coming with us. And, I'll never forget our first year at our second year at Chattanooga. I mean, Greg drove to Cookeville, Tennessee. We played on like a Saturday night against Tennessee Tech in Cookeville, and Greg's there. I'm like, what? I mean, my damn family didn't even want to come to that game. It was like
From Nashville, right? Like
yeah,
an
my
hour
family's
away.
in Nashville. And they were like, I guess we'll come over and watch y'all play Tennessee Tech. Greg's driving from Memphis to Cookeville to watch us play. I mean, that's the one great thing about him. Like he was just as engaged and into it with that team at Chattanooga as he was with our team at LSU that, won the SEC. He was the same level of care and buy-in, which is really unique.
Yeah, we need some more rings. I have 2 rings. I have a Memphis golf ring or the conference, and I have the LSU ring. So we need to get some more.
So, Greg, what are Will's 3 best all-time insults for you?
I don't know if I can clean these up enough to even articulate these. So let me think. One of them is, since Will typically makes all this money, it makes him feel good to take me out to dinner. So I let him pay. I know that's hard to imagine. So usually he'll look over me at some point and say, shit, is that your last meal? You're not on death row, are you? Have you ordered enough? That's a good one. The second one might be, he tends to think that I complain a lot at times. And one of them is, damn, I could give you a bag with $1 million in it and you'd complain how heavy it is. That might be his best.
I did say that. You're right about that.
And the third one is,
that's the truth though, Michael, you know it.
Yes.
That he does. Michael will hear it tonight when we go to dinner. Holly's out of town, so we're going to go out to dinner. He'll hear a little bit. I think the third one is,
make sure he pays tonight.
Who, Michael? Of course.
No, yeah.
I think the third one is, Will's like an early morning guy, and I'm not. I'm not lazy. I really put an emphasis on rest and recovery. I'm into sleep. And he'll have these early shoot arounds sometimes around 11 in the morning. And I'll be dragging out of bed, throwing some warm-ups, have bedhead, and he'll be like, damn, you lazy bastard, you've taken this mindfulness thing to a whole new level. So I'd say those are the top 3. They're innumerable though. I could go on I could write, it's probably my second book will be those.
Okay, Coach, who's in your Final Four in Houston this season, and who do you think is going to cut down the nets?
Well, it's tough till you see a bracket, but I think Houston will be there. I think Kentucky will be there. I'll take Tennessee from the SEC as well, and I'll take a wild card. I'll take Texas. I think they're going to be really good, and I'm going to say Kentucky's going to win it.
Houston would be tough playing in their own home city.
Say Kentucky versus Houston in the championship.
That'd be a great game.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to ask you. I was going to ask some picks on some of the teams I work with. I don't want to think anything.
We don't need to do that. I don't know enough about all those guys.
All right. That's good.
The true definition of a friend, in my opinion, I posted something about this recently, is someone that you can playfully insult all the time and they come back at you even harder, all in fun. And the two of you obviously have developed a really special bond and friendship over the years, which I know is going to continue for the rest of your lives. It's been a lot of fun to be part of a 3-way text with you guys and to see the abuse between the two.
Yeah, we can't really say what those texts say.
No, we cannot. And it's been really awesome.
Like Michael's blowing me up last night. I'm on a plane and he's like, call me. I'm like, I'm doing stuff. Like, It's those
I
kind
know
of.
you're so big now. You're too busy for us, right?
It's not that at all. So it's inopportune
Oh,
moment.
you should be on the other group text I'm on with him and his travel agent, watching him complain about his travel all the time. You should be on that group text. You think yours is something. Be on the one with him, and the travel agent's a good friend of ours. And
Petey,
oh my
Petey,
God,
man. Shout out to Petey.
brutality watching him go back and forth with the travel agent.
Yeah, it
The
must be
thing with
hard.
Michael is so nice. He tries to, but Petey's a savage. He doesn't put up with it, man. You know, Michael will insult you, but it's like, oh, okay, that's a halfway insult. Petey will just go for the jugular, man.
That's right.
He's something else.
Well, guys, I'm excited that you guys both came back on today. I've talked to you both individually on here, and to have both of you on, it's been a lot of fun. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having us,
guys. A lot of fun. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you so much.
See you.
Take care.